Chapter 21. The Ninth Sphere. In the great ancient civilizations that have preceded us in the course of history, the descent into the ninth sphere was the maximum test for the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. Hermes, Buddha, Jesus, Dante, Zoroaster, etc., and many other great masters had to pass through that difficult ordeal. Remember, dearest disciples, the ninth sphere is sex. Many are they who enter the ninth sphere. However, it is very rare to find anyone who can victoriously pass that difficult ordeal. Most students of the occult live flitting from school to school, lodge to lodge, always curious, always in search of novelties, on the lookout for any new lecturer who arrives in the city. When any of those students resolve to work with the Arcanum AZF, when any of those students decide to descend to the ninth sphere in order to work with the fire and the water, he does so as usual, searching, always curious, always foolish. The occultist student turns everything into little schools and theories. If he enters the ninth sphere, he does so as if he's entered another little school, always stupid, always curious, always foolish. It's difficult to find a serious and determined aspirant of the truth on the path of perfect matrimony. Sometimes students appear who are apparently very mature and serious. However, in the long run, they show what they are really made of. Sad truth, but it's the reality of this life. The ordeals of the ninth sphere are very fine and subtle. The doctor advises the devotee to fornicate because, otherwise, the doctor says, he will become ill. The wife's close friends stir up fear in her. The so-called brothers of different organizations frighten the student. Magicians of darkness, disguised as saints, advise the devotee to spill the semen in a saintly manner. Pseudo-sages teach the aspirant negative sexual magic with the spilling of the semen. The manner of teaching, the sublime and mystic tinge the tenebrous ones, disguised as saints, give to their doctrine, succeeds in misleading the devotee and diverting him from the path of the razor's edge. Then the student falls into black magic. When the student goes astray, he believes he is wiser than the masters of Gnosis. Indeed, the failures of the ninth sphere, those who do not succeed in passing the very long and hard ordeals of this arcanum, in fact become terribly perverse demons. Worst of all is that no demon believes himself to be bad or perverse. Every demon believes himself to be saintly and wise. When beginning the practices of sexual magic, the organism is affected. Sometimes, the sexual and parathyroid glands become inflamed, the head aches, one feels a certain dizziness, etc. This frightens the curious butterflies of the little schools who then flee in terror, looking as always for refuge in some new little school. This is how these poor fools spend their lives, always going from flower to flower. The day comes when these poor fools die, having achieved nothing. They have miserably wasted their time. Thus, when death arrives, these fools continue as a legion of demons. The ninth sphere is definitive for the aspirant to realization. It is impossible to intimately self-realize without having incarnated the soul. No one can incarnate the soul if one has not engendered the Christ astral, the Christ mind, and the Christ will. The present internal vehicles of man, referred to by Theosophy, are only simple mental forms everybody must dissolve when they try to achieve intimate self-realization. We need to be born, and being born is, has been, and will always be an absolutely sexual problem. It is necessary to be born, and for that, one must descend to the ninth sphere. That is the maximum ordeal for the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. That is the most difficult ordeal. It is very rare to find someone who can pass that difficult ordeal. Normally, they all fail in the ninth sphere. It is necessary that the husband and wife love each other deeply. People confuse desire with love. The whole world sings of desire, and confuse it with that which is called love. Only those who have incarnated their soul know what love is. The I does not know what love is. The I is desire. Everyone who incarnates his soul is therefore a Buddha. Every Buddha must work in the ninth sphere to incarnate the internal Christ. The Buddha is born in the ninth sphere. The Christ is born in the ninth sphere. First, we must be born as Buddhas, and then as Christs. Blessed be love. Blessed are the beings who truly love one another. Blessed are those who emerge victorious from the ninth sphere. Fearmongers. Many pseudo-esotericists have committed unspeakable genocides. When fearmongers act against the Kundalini, indeed, it is a true genocide. It is an indescribable crime against humanity to tell people in published books that the awakening of the Kundalini is dangerous. Those who spread fear against the Kundalini are worse than war criminals. The latter committed crimes against people, but the pseudo-esotericists who spread fear commit crimes against the soul. Whoever does not awaken the Kundalini cannot incarnate his soul. Whoever does not awaken his Kundalini remains without soul, he loses his soul. It is false to say the Kundalini can awaken without moral progress, and therefore, one must wait until such progress is made. Development of the Kundalini is controlled by the merits of the heart. We give concrete instructions about the Kundalini, and every true serpentine culture knows the path in depth. It is false to say the Kundalini can go different ways when white sexual magic is practiced. It is only when black sexual magic is practiced that the Kundalini descends to man's atomic infernos and becomes Satan's tail. So, that absurd affirmation of the fearmongers that the Kundalini can leave the medullary canal, tear tissue, produce terrible pains, and cause death is false. Those affirmations of the assassins of souls are false because each of the 7 serpents has its specialized masters who watch over the student. The student is not abandoned in the work. When the student awakens the first serpent, he is attended by a specialist, and when the second serpent is awakened, he is helped by another, and so on. These specialists lead the serpent through the medullary canal. No student is abandoned. The specialists have to answer for the student. The specialists live in the astral world. The Kundalini awakens negatively only when the semen is spilled. Whoever practices sexual magic without spilling the semen has nothing to fear. Nobody can actualize the superior aspects of the Kundalini without perfect sanctity. It is then false to say there are disastrous possibilities in the premature actualization of the Kundalini. Such an affirmation is false because premature actualization of the fire cannot occur. The Kundalini can only be actualized based on sanctifications. The Kundalini does not rise even 1 vertebra if the conditions of sanctity required for that vertebra have not been conquered. Each vertebra has its moral conditions of sanctity. It is false and stupid to say the Kundalini can stimulate ambition, pride, or intensify all the base animal qualities and passions of the animal ego. Whoever uses these fear-mongering tactics to keep students from the real path is truly ignorant, because the Kundalini awakened with white sexual magic cannot progress even 1 degree if true sanctity does not exist. The Kundalini is not a blind force. The Kundalini is not a mechanical force. The Kundalini is controlled by the fires of the heart, and can only be developed based on sexual magic and sanctity. We have to acknowledge that the serpentine culture in Mexico was, and continues to be, formidable. Every Aztec sculpture is a marvelous book of occult science. We have gone into ecstasy contemplating Quetzalcoatl, with the serpent entwined about his body, and the lingam yoni in his hands. We have been amazed, contemplating the giant serpent devouring the magician. We have been filled with singular veneration, seeing the tiger with a phallus hanging about its neck. Indeed, the word is in the phallus. In the Aztec culture, there are no fearmongers. Each book of stone, each indigenous lamina, invites us to awaken the Kundalini. It is urgent to first awaken the Kundalini, and then to be devoured by the Kundalini. We need to be swallowed by the snake. We need the Kundalini to swallow us. We need to be devoured by the serpent. When one is devoured by the serpent, he also becomes a serpent. Only the human serpent can incarnate the Christ. Christ can do nothing without the snake. The authentic Aztec and Mayan cultures, the Egyptian and Chaldean, etc., are serpentine cultures that cannot be comprehended without sexual magic and the Kundalini. Every archaic culture is serpentine. Every authentic and true civilization is serpentine. Civilization without the wisdom of the serpent isn't really civilization. Ascent and descent of the Kundalini. Those pseudo-esotericists who affirm that the Kundalini, after having ascended to the crown chakra or lotus of 1,000 petals, descends again into the church of Ephesus or coccygeal center, and remains stored there, are lying terribly. The Kundalini only descends when the initiate lets himself fall. The initiate falls when he spills the semen. The work to raise the serpent, after having fallen, is very arduous and difficult. The Lord of Perfection said the disciple must never let himself fall, because the disciple that falls, then has to struggle a great deal to regain what was lost. Hindus state that within the medullary canal there is a channel called Sushumna, and within this channel there is another called Vajrini, and within this, a third called Citrine, which is as fine as a spider's thread, on which the chakras are threaded like the knots on a bamboo pole. This is how the sacred books of India speak, and we know the Kundalini rises through Citrine solely and exclusively with the Mithuna, sexual magic, Arcanum A Zeta F. We practice internal meditation to achieve ecstasy, but we know very well that the Kundalini does not awaken with meditation because the Kundalini is sexual. It is false to affirm that the awakening of the Kundalini is achieved through meditation. Meditation is a technique for receiving information. Meditation is not a technique for awakening the Kundalini. Pseudo-esotericists have done much damage with their ignorance. In India, there are 7 fundamental schools of yoga, and all of them speak of the Kundalini. These schools of yoga are of no use if Tantrism is not studied. Tantrism is the best of the East. Mithuna, sexual magic, is practiced in every authentic school of esoteric yoga. That is Tantrism. The Tantras give fundamental value to yoga. In the center of the lotus of the heart is a marvelous triangle. This triangle is also in the coccygeal chakra, and in the chakra between the eyebrows. In each of these chakras is a mysterious knot. These are the 3 knots. These knots enclose a profound meaning. Here we have the 3 foundational changes in the work with the serpent. In the first knot, Church of Ephesus, we abandon the system of spilling the semen. In the second knot, Church of Thyatira, we learn to truly love. In the third knot, Church of Philadelphia, we gain true wisdom and see clairvoyantly. The Kundalini must untie these 3 mysterious knots in its ascent. Pseudo-esotericists marvel that primeval Hindu yogis hardly mention the etheric chakras or plexuses, and instead concentrate all their attention on the chakras of the spine and the Kundalini. In fact, the primeval Hindu yogis were tantricists and practiced Mithuna. They were true initiates of the wisdom of the serpent. They knew very well that the key to our redemption is found in the spinal cord and in the semen. They comprehended that the awakened Kundalini opens the spinal chakras, and that these in turn activate the chakras of the plexuses. The main things, then, are the spinal chakras and the serpent. All the great sages and patriarchs of the ancient serpentine civilizations knew this very well. In the 3 triangles, base, cardiac, and frontal, the deity is represented as a sexual lingam. This says so much, but the erudite ignoramuses always search for evasions and excuses in order to alter the truth. It is not fair for pseudo-esotericists to continue deceiving, consciously or unconsciously, this poor suffering humanity. We have studied the great serpentine civilizations in depth, and we therefore speak clearly so those who want to be saved can truly save themselves. We are here to speak the truth, and we speak it even though pseudo-occultists and infrasexuals declare themselves to be our worst enemies. The truth must be told, and we tell it with great pleasure. It is necessary to work with the Kundalini and untie the 3 knots. Those 3 knots are the 3 triangles that transform our lives with chastity, love, and wisdom. The sexual spasm. The White Lodge has totally and absolutely prohibited the sexual spasm. It is absurd to reach the spasm. Those who practice sexual magic must never reach the spasm. Those who set out to avoid seminal ejaculation without giving up the pleasure of the spasm may suffer disastrous consequences to their organism. The spasm is very violent, and if the organism is violent to itself, the results come right away: impotence, damage to the nervous system, etc. All those who practice sexual magic must withdraw from the act long before the spasm. Doctors know very well the reasons why those who practice sexual magic must withdraw before the spasm. You must practice only once a day. Never practice twice a day. Never in our lives should we spill the semen. Never, never, never. This order of the White Lodge must be understood so that, if the spasm unfortunately comes against our will, the disciple will withdraw from the act and immediately lie down in dorsal decubitus, face up. He will then forcibly refrain with the following movements. Instructions. 1. Make the supreme effort a woman makes who is giving birth, sending the nervous current toward the sexual organs while also making an effort to close the sphincters or exits through which the seminal liquor usually escapes. This is a supreme effort. 2. Inhale as if you were pumping or making the seminal liquor rise toward the brain with the breath. As you inhale, vocalize the mantra Ham. Imagine this energy rising to the brain and then passing to the heart. 3. Now exhale the breath, imagining the sexual energy being fixed in the heart. While exhaling, vocalize the mantra Sa. 4. If the spasm is very strong, refrain, and continue inhaling and exhaling with the help of the mantra Ham Sa. Ham is masculine, Sa is feminine, Ham is solar, Sa is lunar. One must expel the air rapidly through the mouth, producing the sound Sa in a soft and delightful way. One must inhale with the mouth half open, mentally chanting the mantra Ham. The basic idea of this esoteric exercise is to invert the respiratory process, making it truly positive, since in the present state the negative, lunar Sa aspect predominates, which leads to seminal discharge. By inverting the respiratory process through this breathing practice, the centrifugal force becomes centripetal, and the semen then flows inward and upward. Addition. The instructions we've given in the preceding paragraphs in case of spasm can also be applied, in general, to every practice of sexual magic. Every practice of sexual magic can conclude with this marvelous exercise. Work in the ninth sphere means struggle, sacrifice, effort, willpower. The weak flee from the ninth sphere horrified, terrified, frightened. Those who are devoured by the serpent become serpents' gods. In very grave cases, when the sexual spasm ensues with imminent danger of seminal ejaculation, the initiate must immediately withdraw from the act, and lie on his back on the hard floor, holding his breath. To do this, he must seal his nostrils, squeezing them with the index finger and thumb. This effort must be accompanied by concentration of thought. The neophyte will concentrate intensely on the pulsations of the phallus, which are a repetition of the heartbeat. He will try to curb these sexual pulsations to avoid spilling the semen, and if he is forced to inhale oxygen, it must be done with short and rapid inhalation, continuing with the maximum retention of breath.